According to the Grip Climbing magazine article, How Climbing Really Began, some of our primate ancestors, the Homo naledi, that lived until about 250,000 years ago in the limestone karst of the Malami Desert Dolomites in South Africa, left behind the earliest existence of fossil evidence of rock climbing skills. While people have climbed to the top of mountains since antiquity, it is finally in the last century coming into its own as a sport. In this speech, I will tell you about the history of rock climbing as it has developed into a sport we see today. I will begin by telling you about the origins of rock climbing as a sport. Then I will move on to telling you about its rise to popularity. And finally, I will tell you about the current state of rock climbing. I will begin with the early days of rock climbing. Rock climbing originally was done purely out of necessity, and not until recently was it considered as its own activity. Rock climbing for a long time was considered part of the sport of mountaineering. Europeans in the early 20th century began by climbing the tallest peaks in Europe, such as the Mont Blanc in the French Alps. They used a combination of techniques such as aid and free climbing to summit these peaks. According to the Alpine Institute, free climbing came to be defined as climbing the rock using only one's hands, feet, and body for support and upward progress, while the use of other methods was termed aid climbing. Rock climbing came into its own later into the 20th century. According to the National Geographic article, Rock Climbing, From Ancient Practice to Olympic Sport, 3 places are credited as the birthplaces of modern recreational climbing: the Peak and Lake districts of England, the Elbe Sandstone region of southeastern Germany, and the Dolomites of northern Italy. There, climbers utilize the skills learned from the early days of mountaineering to ascend rock faces using tools such as primitive carabiners and pitons or soft iron spikes to ascend the walls. Rock climbing finally hit its stride in the 1950s when a small group of climbers began racing to be the first to summit the Great Granite Walls of Yosemite in California. According to the Denver Climbing Company article titled The History of Rock Climbing, there were 2 main schools of thought that defined this era in climbing, that of Warren Harding and that of Royal Robbins. The article states that Harding believed in doing whatever was necessary to ascend the rock. Robbins, on the other hand, advocated clean climbing, a style of climbing that leaves as little gear in the rock as possible. Robbins' clean climbing ideals eventually won out. Climbing developed from early mountaineering to rock climbing, finally becoming what it is today, a less intrusive sport defined by its use of the climber as the sole means of ascension. Rock climbing nowadays is a much simpler sport. Climbers carry up the bare minimum they need. Safety gear consists of a simple harness, such as this one, a rope to tie into, and a carabiner to attach the rope to the wall with, and a device such as an ATC or a gree to allow you to climb the wall safely without risk of falling. The safety provided by the gear we use allows us to go higher and farther than ever before, while maintaining that unintrusive doctrine. According to the Outdoor Foundation 2020 Outdoor Participation Report, in 2019, there were a total of 5.3 million people who participated in indoor climbing in the US, 2.1 million who participated in bouldering, and 2.4 million who participated in mountaineering. The decades of rock climbing development shaped it into a safe sport many enjoy today. As a climber myself, I can attest to this. I use this equipment every single day. The safety provided by the gear has saved me from what would have been a deadly fall more times than I can count, and allows me to climb risk-free every single day. Through this speech, I told you about the evolution of rock climbing, from mountaineering to the early climbing in Europe, and finally to the development of rock climbing in Yosemite to the sport we see today. All of this is to say that rock climbing is a much safer sport than it has been, and it allows many people to climb.